Hello everyone. I hope you can see me. I hope you can hear me. um, my name is Alexander Lyushenko. I'm a Google developer expert in Flutter and Dart and engineering manager at Tide. I was one of engineers who helped Tide to migrate their native applications into Flutter, and today I wanted to work on some tutorial together with you, the one that initially we used as a manual, like an introduction for all new joiners on how to step into the architecture that we created for our mobile application. Just to give you some context, we have a team of 70 plus Flutter engineers, and we work on an application with more than 3 million lines of code, code base, like an application with more than 3 million lines of code there. And hence, it was really important for us to unify our approach so that every new joiner, every newcomer who joins the team can easily get up to speed with the code base. I will be reading all your comments right here, so don't miss your opportunity to ask your questions and interact with me, because I think it would be really boring otherwise if I will just read the tutorial together with you and work on this tutorial like that. Hey, Peter. So let me share my screen. And why don't we start? State management. Doesn't really matter, but in that case, block. Let's start with this tutorial. And by the way, please ping me if you think that I should increase fonts in my IDE or in Safari. You may find a link to this tutorial in the description of this stream, and of course, feel free to work together with me on the implementation. And by the way, I think that it might take quite some time for us if we want to complete this tutorial. Usually, like realistically, I give from 3 to 4 working days for new joiners to really complete this tutorial and work on all tasks there. So I'm not sure whether we will complete it today, but we will see. And of course, we always may meet again and schedule another stream. So Tide, as I already told you, 3 million lines of code, huge team, and really robust architecture. Good evening. The tutorial consists of 6 different parts: introduction, utility layer, feature layer, application, navigation, and testing. That would be the structure of the project we will be working on. And frankly speaking, that's quite a good, it just sounds pretty quiet. Oh, full volume. Hey, Daria. Well, I don't know. I hope you can hear me well. Folks, please tell me in the chat whether you can hear me, or I can try to do something with my setup. Sound is good. Thank you. So speaking of the project structure, this structure is quite good for majority of applications, and frankly speaking, it's quite straightforward, and it has really simple rules like, hello, we have only 3 layers: application, features, and utilities here. At Tide, we have more layers, like for example, we have a QA layer or security layer, but I'm not sure whether you need all these layers. And frankly speaking, you may put everything in utilities, because in the end, everything from these layers are utilities. I'm not sure whether it's there in the text, but just some guidelines. Utility can Yep. Utility can depend on other utility, and that's it. Features. Feature can depend on utilities, but feature cannot depend on other feature. And application can depend on features, and application can depend on any utility. So frankly speaking, application has just a green light to depend on anything it needs. Feature can depend only on utilities. Utility can depend only on other utility. And by the way, that still might create a problem for us with cycles in dependencies. But that would be a topic for another day. Maybe I will add another part here, and we'll talk about CI/CD, because how do you enforce these dependencies rules is the question in chat, and the answer is CI/CD. We created quite comprehensive pipelines for everything. Oh, hey Anna. So yeah, you cannot really merge any PR if it's not following our rules. That was it about project structure. Oh, by the way, yeah, of course, you might check writing Flutter apps in Lego style at Flutter Vikings talk, where me and Anna talked about our architecture. But together we will work through this architecture and this application now. Pipelines for the win, absolutely. First things first, let's create our initial project. Yep, here I have an IDE with just an empty folder. Create a root directory for MiniClient project. We call it MiniClient, but you may pick any name you like. MiniClient is kind of insider's joke. I will not tell it to you. If you want to understand this joke, join Tide. Thanks, Philip. Inside directory, create 3 more folders: app, feature, utility. Let's do this together. So app, feature, wrong one. Yep, feature, and new folder, utility. Done. Inside the application folder, create a new Flutter application with the following command: Flutter create platform Android iOS MiniClient. Okay, let's do that. Open in integration terminal, and I will run this command. All right, seems like we have quite default application for now. What else? For now, MiniClient folder contains a default counter app example. Don't worry, we'll come back to it, but first let's dive into utility layer. Let's do this together, shall we? Utility package. So as I already mentioned, every utility package can depend on other utility packages. That means that it will be available after webinar and on YouTube. Yes, I think so. As a utility can depend on other utilities, probably that's a perfect place to put your linter to. So for now, let's close this guy and start working on linter. Linter will help us to enforce our guidelines for the project. And that's really unfortunate that it's a bit painful in Dart to write custom rules for linter. It's possible. And by the way, on my YouTube channel, there is a video where I show how to write custom linters for your project, but that's not easy. Oh, by the way, I need to update the text here. It says that efforts of over 60 mobile engineers. We have 70 something now. Alrighty, create a folder called Tide Analysis inside utility folder. Let's keep the same naming folder, just for simplicity. The folder itself, of course, is just a folder. So to make it a Dart package, we need to create a popspec.yaml file. Let's do this now. add new file, pubspec.yaml. All right, here we have this proposed content. Of course, I could type it, but I think it would be more fun if we achieve more, if I will just copy paste some things here. And by the way, here is the first kind of holy war topic, because right now here we have these loose constraints on SDK. And that's not always what you want in a large code base. Maybe you would want to use Flutter Doctor version. Maybe you would want to use Dart version that you have installed locally and make it strict like that. Why? Because if you're working in a small team with, I don't know, 3 or 4 colleagues, then it's not that complex to agree on the Flutter and Dart versions, so you may have the same problems, the same errors in your team. But if you're working on a huge team, then you might want to enforce some versions so that the project will not work if there is a version mismatch. I will use it like that, because there might be some differences with the manual. So I will use these constraints now, and inside lib folder I need to create analysis options.yaml. And that's an interesting thing here, because probably you already familiar with analysis options, and usually you would put it near pubspec.yaml file. So why we are creating it in lib? Why it's not working for me? Lib, like that. Well, that's because if you want analyzer to work in your project, then you put it near pubspec.yaml. But if you want analysis options to be in your project, like to be a part of your package, then you put it in lib folder and you write analyzer rules like that. Let me copy paste this guy. Oh, I created a folder. This is wrong. Sorry. So I wanted to create analysis options.yaml file. And no one told me in the chat that I'm doing some nonsense. You probably want it to be good old boring show type video, right? Where I would make a misprint and struggle with it. Alrighty, so I have analysis options with these guys. We probably may talk about it a tiny bit, like everything is more or less clear by just, you might get what these analysis options controls by just reading this file. Like analyzer will exclude. Thank you. We don't want analyzer to analyze generated code because, well, if you have a tiny project, like for example MiniClient, that's not a problem. But if you have 3 million lines of code in your code base, that's a problem. That would be a really problematic even for really fast MacBook Pro with M4 Pro CPUs and tons of RAM. Is just not working. That's why we exclude serialization files. I'm trying to remember whether we will have anything except serialization and deserialization here in the G files. Probably no. Freezed files. I'm a huge fan of freezed, and I think that if you're not using freezed on your project, then you're missing something. You should. .config.dart file is our DI configuration files, and we will talk about them later on. And of course, BDD tests. So we're saying that language should be really strict and setting some rules there. I think, yeah, congratulations, thanks, bonus exercise. So there are many more useful rules for analyzers that we might want to enable. And of course, here is the link you may open and see all these rules, like you might want to enable more rules. You might not only want to enable, you should enable more rules, but should you do that in your project? Like, let's imagine that I'm working on a simple application, and do I really want to spend my time reading all analysis options rules and handpicking the ones that I would find good for my team and my project? Most likely, you don't want that. Like for majority of projects, I would recommend to pick some really good linter rule set. Like, let's go to pubdev. For example, very good analysis. Very good analysis, yep. You may take these rules from Very Good Ventures and just use them in your project. And by the way, let's review the implementation. Let's open the repository. So that's our Very Good analysis. And we can go to lib. Oh, look, we have analysis options, similar to what we have in our project. So we kind of created an alternative for Very Good analysis, but our own version of it. And if you open this config file, you may see similar set of rules. So I can even just copy paste it and use this version. But for now, let's keep the one that we have here. It's not the best rule set, but it's just the beginning. Alrighty, that was our first package. The second one, Tide Prelude. That's an interesting name. I think that when I joined Tide, it was called Prelude, and we just kept that name, though. Of course, I read the internet about these rules, and I was like, is it a common term? And apparently, yes, it is. It's a common term for utility packages. Here in this example, I believe that there will be only one class, but in real implementation, there might be more. There might be some extensions on collections, some utilities that you might need in pretty much every package. So that would be our utilities. Let's create Tide Prelude folder under utility. New folder, Tide Prelude. And of course, a new pubspec.yaml file, so that this folder will not be just a folder. Just a folder, it would be a package. And that would be our foundational components. Let me copy paste this guy here. Alexei, it's so nice to see you here. Dev dependencies, Tide analysis, we are using our analysis. Let's check whether it works. I wonder why I don't have some buttons there. All right, that's a bit weird, but let's run Flutter pubget. Oh, by the way, I've created some aliases for some of commands, like that's just Flutter pubget FPG. Okay. Now we need to create analysis options.yaml file and use linter rules that we created together. That's how you can do that. Did you set up a clean VS Code for this live coding session, or you are using the one you use in general? No, that's not clean VS Code. That's what I use on my personal computer. So clearly I'm not working from my work machine. But yeah, it's more or less real. Why? Is it too white? Tight analysis, it looks clean. Yeah. We'll always, yep. So if we want to, if if we want tight analysis rules to be applied in our project, we create analysis options file with this line, and we will use the same file in pretty much every other package we create. Let's start working on the results class. I will create a new file. It will be a new file. It will be under lib.src, and we will call it result.dart. Android engineers probably already familiar with result, and most of engineers are familiar with maybe or either monads. So that's our kind of primitive version of this concept. Let's copy paste this code, and we will try to understand what's going on there. Alrighty. By the way, should I increase font there, or that's fine? I assume that's fine. Font is good. Thank you. Alrighty. So what we have here, we have a basic class called result with just one method, fold. And we have two subclasses, failure and success, which are just containers for failure and success values. And I wonder whether I will have a link. Yep, here. You may want to read this article to understand monad concept, and I really tried to keep it simple. So that's just a translation of an article. This one, yep, Aditya Bhargava. So he created an amazing article, and he described the monad concept quite well. So I just translated it to Dart, and you might want to check this tutorial later on. But we will be creating our own version of probably that would be monad. I don't remember the implementation here. So that would be our way to collecting power to give it a third read. First two attempts melt my brain. Sorry. But if you work with this concept on daily basis, like it's not that hard. So it will just help us to return multiple values from a function. And like usual use case is if you want to return a value or an error. That would not always be like that. And by the way, there is a concept, railway-oriented programming. You might want to check it too. Yeah, so it will not always be about success and failed values, but most of the time it will. And here, like for example, we are returning a string in a divide function if we try to divide by 0 and otherwise do the operation. Let's review the signature. So fold takes two functions here, if success and if failure, and return a value from them. So if success takes success value of the container and returns some value. If failure, return the value of the same type, but it gets the type of a failure there. You probably will understand why we are doing this and how to work with that stuff when we will actually use this monad. Truncated version of async value, most likely. Why are we using the helper function instead of using the constructors for success and failure? Yeah, you can use constructors there. It's just sometimes it reads better when it's just a function. And if you read other similar libraries like fpdart, then if I'm not wrong, there are factory functions too. that instantiates either. So just a convention. But yeah, absolutely, you can use constructors here. Why we're using result and not tuples or records? Well, because of semantic clarity, because if you have a record, then you can put anything there. They are more lean, and that's not what we always need. Tuple, I think that tuple might be deprecated now, no? At least I've seen that many projects dropped tuples. I don't know, maybe it's not, because why? It still works. But mostly I prefer either for semantic clarity. Is this a short representation of darts either? Because darts looks deprecated. All right, well, I'm not sure whether darts deprecated, but it may look like. However, let's open fpdart. Fpdart is really similar to darts, but it has really great documentation. So if you're just starting with functional concepts, then probably, use fpdart. Then probably you might want to use it. However, you know what's interesting? When I was working on some of my applications recently, I found that I struggled with fpdart. If you know why you need IO or task or either task or task either, whenever it's called here, or reader, or if you understand why do you need state and why you need to chain all these monads together and how to do that, then yeah, definitely you don't need to create your own version of either. Just use the one that's already provided in fpdart. However, I added a few helpers to the result class, and I found that it's just easier for me to use a simple monad that's not that flexible, that's probably was created for my project, and that's why it's not universal. Most likely you would not want to use my version of result. However, it's really simple, and we can create an implementation in like 300 lines of code, which is a lot, but it will be your implementation. And I don't know, I just found that I prefer it now. Though when I just joined Tide, I remember that I wanted to migrate from result to fpdart because, well, it's better to use task and not future, right? Not always, but sometimes, yeah. So right now, this result is not that helpful. Like we have a fold function, which is great. However, we might want to add all these functions too. And I remember here the tip: do not blindly copy paste the above code. And that is so true, because you need to understand what's going on here if you want to be efficient with this concept. So let's copy paste everything, every function like that. We have a map function, and map function will use fold under the hood. And by the way, pretty much every function here will use fold. And it will run a function on the success value. Like if the value is success, then it will transform it to something else. And that would allow us to make some data transformation on results. And that would lead us to data transformation chains, which are really powerful. So that's a really powerful concept. We would need this one. Flat map. Yeah. Flat map. So flat map will do a similar thing, but it will take two results and will kind of map two results together. It allows you to combine multiple results here. And async flat map is a similar thing, but it's just an asynchronous version of the flat map. I just lost my cat he he decided that it's better to eat than to listen to functional programming. Smart move. For each is a function that allows us to run side effects on. Oh, I have Copilot here. Nope, we don't want AI for today. For each, we'll just run a side effect on a function, on a result value, which means if result contains a success value, it will run a function with that value. Otherwise, it will do nothing. Get or else is just a helper method for us that would run fold and return a value and return default value otherwise. Get or null will do the same, but will return null if the value is failure. And here things becomes more interesting. So from async is a helper function that helps us not to write try catches everywhere in our code base. So it will run an asynchronous function, and if that function completes successfully, it will put it into success container and return the value. Otherwise, on exceptions or errors, it will return a failure, either with the exception itself, or if it's an error, it will create a new exception. I wonder what I feel by looking at this implementation now. I guess some things are missing here, or maybe not. Like this one. Well, we have runtime type, we have stack trace. That's fine. Let's keep it as is. From action is absolutely the same, but it will run a synchronous function, so that so that we would not need to write try catches again ourselves. From nullable might be handy if you want to chain some results. Probably we may call that monad, because we have map, flat map. What was that? Map, flat map, and fold. Yep. So if you want to chain different results, then from nullable might be handy. And from predicate is really similar. It will just execute some condition, and if it's true, return success. If it's failure. I see that there are some comments. Let me quickly review what we have here. Well, you know what's interesting? I'm unhappy with these comments that I wrote here. I'm unhappy because these comments are absolutely useless. Well, right now, you may just select this code and ask ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever AI you're using, ask them, hey, how that works? And these methods are rather short, so it's not that hard to understand how to actually use these methods. What I would put here instead actually is, why do I need this from action, from nullable, and other things? Even here, like success with a value is the future fails. Kind of, but I guess it would benefit the documentation if I put more use cases, like examples here. Oh, I think I remembered why it's like that. Let's read further. So we created this result file under src folder, which means it will not be visible outside of the package. Of course, in Dart, that's not really true. You still can access files from src folder, but Linter will complain and it will tell you not to do that. So to make this file visible, we will create a barrel file. Let's create a new file, and there is a naming convention that usually it's called the same as the package. So we have type Prelude, I create type Prelude package there, and I export the result file from here. So that now, if I want to use it, I would need to import type Prelude, and I would not care whether it's in result file or I refactor it later on. So yeah, use barrel files always. And by the way, Anna created this amazing code generation package. It was published 18 months ago, but it's still great. I still highly recommend you to use it. If you already use code generation in your code base, it would just write barrel files for you. I think it's awesome. Alrighty, so bonus exercise. That's why I probably added such comments. Now, most likely I was just too lazy to add real life examples. That's why I asked you, all of you, to came up with at least one real life usage example for result function. And if you are unfamiliar with this concept, then it might be quite tricky for you to find some. So you might want to spend some time with ChatGPT and thinking about real world use cases there. Write at least one unit test for each function. I can do that. At the same time, it will take quite some time for me. So it should be really straightforward, because these unit tests, they will not be about real implementation. They will be quite artificial. I propose us not to spend time on these unit tests now. However, of course, that's one of the most important classes in your code base. So you do want to have 100% of coverage of this file in your real project. And if you want to rely on this class, yep, you should cover it with tests. But during the live coding, let's maybe just try to find some real-world examples for each of these functions and not spend time writing unit tests. And for that, let me open this article once again. So that's kind of what we have there. I think it's about option. Yeah, it's about yeah, if you don't want to write the tests, use fpdart. True. It's about option, but the concept would be really the same. Like if we have a value, a success value, then you may think of it like of a result as a container for our value. So just 2 means success with a value of type integer of 2. And if we want to add a value to the success value, then we would need to unwrap it first, and that's why we have this map method. So we cannot just multiply or I don't know, do anything with the value, but with the map you are sending a function that will modify the value there. So map is needed to modify actual value in the container. And here, if we're talking about 2 containers and we need to somehow combine values from 2 boxes or 2 containers, that's where you would use flat map. Well, let's try to find real world examples. We just used from async, and we obtained some value from network. So right now in success, we have a value, a result of HTTP operation, or in the error, we have actual exception that happened during the networking operation. So now we want to deserialize that value. That's a synchronous operation. We might want to use map there, but the operation, deserialization operation may fail itself. That's why it would make sense to create another result there just for deserialization. So we will use a flat map. Its deserialization in Dart is synchronous because most probably you will use JSON decode, but you know that if the JSON is really huge, then you might want to wrap it in some isolate and make the operation asynchronous. So that's where you will use async flat map. Let's imagine that we want to add some logs. So we don't want to modify any value, but we want to, I don't know, store the network operation itself, the result. Though it's a really bad idea, by the way, from security perspective to store HTTP logs like that. But artificial example, we want to print all network responses. So you'll use for each because that would be just a side effect on the function. Get or else or get or null. You may use it if you want to get a value from that networking operation if you're lazy, but ideally you should use fold and think how your application should behave for both if success and if failure cases. Alrighty. Let's get back to our exercise. Result often comes with a simpler monad called optional. It's not optional, it's option. Who wrote that? Usually we call it option. Or well, yeah, so that's option. And oops, let me close this one and these two. Or we may call it maybe. And it looks really similar to the result, but we would need to drop a value from failure. It's really the same. We just need to get rid of this value and slightly modify the class so that there will be no value in error. We will not be able to return it, but the difference is really tiny there. I don't know. I'm not sure whether we want to work on these two. And you probably now is a bit annoyed because I promised that I will work on all bonus exercises. Do you still use option after null safety? Oh, yes, we do. And you might want to use option from fpdart to chain your monads because it will work quite nicely. Though in our code base, I think that we had option, but I don't really remember that we used it anywhere. Maybe it's not that useful anymore because where are you? Well, because you probably might want to have an error value if something goes wrong. And I don't know, maybe I think that you always can use result instead of option, but you otherwise, but the vice versa is incorrect. Like you cannot use option everywhere because you will lose some information about the error itself. So maybe it's not that useful, but it's still nice to know. And if you work with pure functional programming concepts, then most likely you would want to use option too. Let's not spend time implementing it. It's really the same. You just copy paste this code and remove this value flag and fix compilation errors. And that's it. It's the same. So let's work on some other things instead, like for example, DI. Dependency injection. We use getIt for dependency injection, like a service locator. However, I remember for quite some time, like when I just started working with Flutter, I created my own service locator because, frankly speaking, it's not that hard to create one. Let's open the source code. So here we have getit, lib, getit implementation. What happened to getit? I remember it when it contained just a few hundred lines of code, and now it's huge. Alright, but getit is really powerful. You have scopes there, and you might want to use scopes. And overall, well, that's really robust service locator. So I would advocate against creating your own service locator nowadays. And I have two reasons for that. The first one is that, oh my, it looks like getit implementation really improved from the last time I checked it. But the other reason for that is that you might want to use some other frameworks that rely on getit. And I'm talking about injectable, some code generation that helps us to write getit initializers. And that's really huge. So let's start working on the DI. We will need to create one more utility package, not file. That would be a folder called tight.di. Again, we will need to create a new pubspec.yaml file to make this folder pubspec a Dart package. I will copy paste this guy. Oh, by the way, if I remember correctly, here we fixed environment variable. Why don't we use it consistent everywhere? Like here and here. I see one more problem here. Getit was already we use a previous major version of getit. So why don't we update to the latest one? Let's see whether it works. Seems like everything is fine, and we can start working on the DI. And by the way, we need to copy paste this file because we want our linter to work in this folder. Make sure that custom analyzer rules work. Done. Create libsrc tight.di initializer. Yep. So we have an agreement regarding barrel files that everything you create in a package must be under libsrc folder. So yeah, it's just the rule, and it's universal for every package that we use at Tide, and I highly suggest you to follow the same rule in your packages too. Is there a way to fail CI in case injectable can see it does not have some dependency registered while expected in constructor of another class? That's an interesting proposition, and I don't think so, but most probably you would not need that if you follow the same architecture that I'm showing to you, because injectable will complain that something is not registered there. It will complain. Let me open the introduction again, and let's look at this project structure again. So let's imagine that we have dependency that's registered in utility. It's described in utility, and in the end, all dependencies will be used in the application, and application will know about all dependencies. But feature A may depend on utility, but injectable will not know that something was registered from utility package in the app. So it will complain there. I guess you may fix this problem with injectable modules. And here in this tutorial, we're using just slightly different approach. So it will complain. warnings. Well, yeah, unfortunately, these warnings, you will see them there. And by the way, here I'm copy pasting a very interesting implementation. At first, I was against this well, no, against is the wrong word. I was not against this implementation. It wasn't clear for me why do we need tight DI initializer, and like with this initializers approach, I thought that it might be overkill for the project. And if I'm not mistaken, Anna proposed this approach, so we had conversations whether it makes sense to have it or maybe not. Well, we decided that why not? We may have these initializers, and that was such a great idea to introduce them. Highly recommended. I really hope that we will have some time to work on this application, and you will see why these initializers are so great. But yeah, we've created tight DI initializer class, and its responsibility is to register something in getIt. So it has a getIt instance, and it registers dependencies in getIt in a modular way. If I'm not wrong, we came up with this approach before injectable had modules. So maybe that's one of reasons why we decided to implement it like that. And now it says that we need to create a container. Let's copy paste some more code here. src container. And DI container is our abstraction over getIt. We may use any service locator actually we want. We may even create our own implementation of service locator because it's not such I did, said Anna. It's not that hard to build your own service locator, and if you're unsure how to do that, then that's exactly the reason why you should build one, just to understand that it's rather a simple class. So we created an abstraction over getIt. So in the future, if we decide to move away from getIt to something else, we can easily do that, as getIt now is an internal implementation of our tight DI package. And we create a barrel file with 2 experts from this project. So it should be under lib. We should under lib and we should call it tight DI like that. What other options could we use instead of getIt? After completing the manual, replace getIt with any other service locator of your choice. I think I've seen something like simple ISC, simple locator. No? Watch it, inherited state with simplest service locator. Simple ref is probably another one alternative. Well, there are tons of them because it's really easy to build one. At the same time, I kind of get it why they are not that popular, because if you want to have a robust solution that's well tested, then you probably would just go with getIt. Yeah. That's a good point too, that null and absence of value might be different. Because null is kind of a value too. So yeah, let's move on. Networking. And we are still preparing our solution, our project for actual real implementation. And most likely you might want to reuse some of these packages in your other projects. So if you work in, I don't know, some agency, if you work in outsourcing company, then you might want to create your own set of utilities and maintain them. And now let's create an API client. that would be a new folder with a pubspec.yaml file with some copy paste, and I would need to copy this one because we agreed to use the latest version here. And by the way, I see that some dependencies are out of date, so why don't we update them too? Update this to latest, DO to latest, injectable, yep, JSON annotation. I wonder why we need JSON annotation. Well, probably we will see soon. Retrofit, absolutely. Build runner, injectable generator, JSON serializable, retrofit generator. Okay. Oh. Yep, to the latest version. And let's do pub-get. Now it succeeded, and we have all the latest version. For the last time, we will remind you about turning on the custom linter rules. Okay, let's copy paste this file so that it will use my rules for API client. Great. And here we might face a problem, or maybe let's work on this tutorial for now, but soon I will show you one problem with Marvel API that I found just yesterday. But let's pretend that everything will be all right. So I will create a lib src model Marvel response dot spoilers. Yep. Response model there, and if you review the API, you will see that all responses from Marvel API are wrapped in a data field. That's why we create a custom Marvel response model that would be a container for all responses. Let's copy paste this implementation, and it complains that, oh my god, Marvel response.g file is not there. We will need to run code generation to fix that. Let's open terminal and run this command there. Marvel API not working. Yes. I found that they changed something in authentication, and there is a thread on Reddit where folks complain that, hey, it's not working anymore, and it looks like it's down for almost 2 months now. So we will use another API in this tutorial, but we will need it in a feature layer. So when we will be working on a feature layer, I will show you how we will change our API client so that it will work with other API. But for now, let's pretend that everything is fine with Marvel API and that we will still use it. What to use for authentication? Is it possible to use Azure B2C with Flutter? Well, you may use anything with Flutter because it's just a mobile application. Like Dart allows you to build. If something is possible with native development, then yeah, it's possible with Flutter too. And I see that Bytes by Tushar even says that he done that. So, yep. We will see how authentication is implemented in Marvel API shortly. So let's continue. Let's move on. The API is protected with public and private API keys. Go here and grab one pair for yourself. Well, I already grabbed one, but that will not help us. Once you're done, create a new file, di parameters name. Let's create a folder di with di parameters name file under src folder. Here, new file, di parameter name with these names there. And here we have, again, not a holy war topic, but still, why do we need abstract class if we just use it as a container for some static constants? Maybe you don't want that. I usually advocate against such abstract classes, but if you work in a team of 70 plus engineers, sometimes you just need to accept different ways of working. So that's our guidelines at Tide, and you might want to use it too, though you might want not to use them. Now register API key values in DI. For that, we would need to use DI module. And here I will use injectable. So we will see how that will help us with dependencies really soon. I created a new DI module, and DI module will provide two values, private API key and public API key from environment. And we would need somehow two hardcode values here. If you want your pentesters team to be mad, you may do this and provide default value with some API keys that will look real, and that will make them mad. At the same time, sometimes you might want to bring some fake values here. If your code base leak, then most likely someone will try to run your application with these values, so at least you will see that your application indeed leaked. So you may want to put some fake numbers there. But if you don't want to upset your pen testers, don't do that. Just use string from environment. All right, let's move on. We have another class, and that would be the interceptor. And we will use interceptor to add authentication related values. Like, well, let's just create this file. It should be under src API interceptor, like that. And let me copy paste this implementation. So that's how it works. If you want your requests to be accepted by Marvel API, you would need to add additional query parameters, 3 parameters. The timestamp, though not necessarily it would be a timestamp, it would be just some unique value that you need to pass. API key, which would be a public API key, and private key, but private key would be protected like that. It would be encoded in a hash, so you would need to use this timestamp, private and public API key values, and then calculate MD5 checksum on that value. And that's how Marvel API is protected. Alrighty, so according to the tutorial, now we need to register our DO instance. Let's move on to DO module. And register this guy. So I would need to import it here and import it there. And I'm not sure whether it's mentioned anywhere in the tutorial, but inside a package, you always should prefer using src, using, by the way, imports with a package, and always use files under src. Do not use barrel files in the same package, because that will create cyclomatic dependencies. And while your application will work, it will be really slow, and your analyzer performance will degrade a lot. So that's how we register DI. I see something is going on there. Well done. Thanks. Thank you. I will let folks to respond there. Oh, Volodymyr, you're here. Hello. So Dio module, we registered Dio. Let's move on. Now we create our DI initializer, and that would be a boilerplate code. At Tide, we created some Mason templates, and we don't really create packages like I create them right now. We just generate them with a single command with all the boilerplate that we would need to write there. So this DI initializer file would look the same in absolutely all packages with DI. And let me copy paste some code there. Alrighty, so it says that we need to use DI initializer.config file. We don't have one, so let's generate one. Command is the same, though I created some aliases for that. For me, it would be FPG, and FPG would do the same code generation. I highly suggest you to use aliases too, because some Dart commands are too long to be typed each time. And here we may see that we have DI initializer generated. Let's review what's going on there. So we configured DI module, we created a DI module and said that we will be interested in private API, public API, and Dio instances there. And we've created Marvel API interceptor annotated with lazy singleton. And that's exactly what was generated for us. So that's our Dio module that registers factories for public API, private API. It registers lazy singleton for API interceptor. And here we register Dio, and it provides an interceptor as a parameter for Dio. So even on our scale, on the scale of our really trivial project, you may see that it already made sense. Like, I would not want to type this code manually. However, of course, you may. Not necessarily you need to use injectable, and you always can write this code yourself. Is that config.dart ignored by analyzer? Well, let's review our analyzer rules. By the way, yep. So we configured our analyzer in a way that it will ignore all generated code here. Run the code generation, and it's time to decide what classes will be visible from the API client package. We would need to create a barrel file here, so it would be IP client.dart, and let's export two files from here. So from outside, only DI initializer and Marvel response would be visible. Make it possible to change the base URL during compilation time. Why not? Let's work on this. For that, we would need to introduce one additional parameter like that. So here, do we need that? Yes, we do. Okay, so that would be base URL. It can be any value here. So I will use base URL API key, just base URL, because it would be private here. So I will register it as base URL. I will call it base URL, and here I will expect a parameter which will be called base URL. What next? I guess that base URL is passed here as a parameter, right? So I will need to pass another string base URL, and it will be named with this name. We'll have base URL, and here I will pass base URL. It looks real. Let's see whether it works. Yep, it worked. So now I can pass base URLs during compilation time, And of course, that might be handy if you have different environments, for example, web staging, production, or maybe more environments. Like you will be able to set up your project for different flavors like that. Read about SSL pinning in the DO documentation and implement one for this API. Well, frankly speaking, that's more for our new joiners at Tide, because I'd love everyone to really understand the concept of SSL pinning and why it's important and how to update it. It's not that hard to build the implementation yourself. We probably will not work on this right now, especially because Marvel API is down and it will not work. So I will leave it for you to read the documentation. But yeah, it's really important to understand the importance of SSL pinning in your application. And here it suggests to read about the build.yaml file and optimize the code generation. Of course, for this project, we don't need that. Like, that's a really trivial project, and on my MacBook, it will not be a problem to generate anything here. And I remember this conversation with the team at Tide when we just started the migration to Flutter, that, hey, we probably don't want to commit generated code to repository because, well, we can run code generation and it will just work. That's not true anymore for our project. Like, it will take few hours for my MacBook to generate all code for the project there. So we do commit code generation, and we optimized code generation a lot. So you may read about how to optimize it in this article. Like, for example, here, that's a really powerful technique that, hey, you may tell JSON serializable that all your models will live here, or you may even specify concrete models you want JSON serializable to generate code for, and that will significantly speed up code generation. Of course, on the scale of MiniClient, you will not notice the difference, but on a larger scale, the difference would be huge. So yeah, you should optimize code generation for your project. Monitoring. If I'm not wrong, we used Firebase for this project. And, well, most likely you will have Firebase in your project. So that's always a solid choice. And of course, Firebase is far from ideal. Like, it's slow. And now it has no major problems with versions, but some time ago it was really painful when in patch versions maintainers of Firebase broke something, and you would need to then reverse engineer what happened to your project. So Firebase is not perfect, but it's still a solid choice, and most likely you will have it in your application. That's why it makes sense to use it for monitoring. But at the same time, it will take some time for me to build it. So I'm hesitant whether we should do this now together. Let's implement some really primitive version of monitoring instead. Oops. I will create another utility. It will be Tide monitoring file. I'll copy paste the content for this file. We agreed to use the latest version of the SDK, so we'll copy paste this one, and the version that I have installed, the Flutter version. Let's do the same. What do I have here? 390.29. Okay. All right. Firebase. Let's not use Firebase for this project because, well, it would be the same, frankly speaking. Our custom monitoring would be the same, but I don't want us to create a new Firebase project right now together. I will bump all versions here, and we are ready to run pubget. Great. Read Firebase documentation on how to integrate it. Let's pretend that we've done that. Here we create a new module for monitoring just to register Crashlytics there. And by the way, notice interesting things here. So we have a singleton, not lazy singleton, but just a singleton, which would be instantiated, not lazily. And we have pre-resolve because we have a feature there. So it would, the DI initialization mechanism would await Crashlytics to be initialized there, and it will allow Firebase to initialize the application, configure the error handling there, so that it will be it will report all problems to Firebase there. I'm not sure about having fatal true here. Well, if you want to have absolutely every problem as a crash there, then yeah, you can do that. Otherwise, not sure. Not every problem would be fatal. So you might want to keep your crash logs cleaner and not put true here. Yeah, but we registered Firebase Crashlytics in DI to pass it here. So let's do this one instead. I would need to create a new file. It would be under lib src monitoring.dart. And Android Studio fans right now probably laugh because there you don't need to put an extension. Copy paste the implementation. I don't want to use Firebase Crashlytics, and in our implementation there will be nothing there. I will use log instead. Log from develop package. Let me copy paste the implementation here. I'll remove this one. So log. Oh. Log. No. I don't remember what was the name. Let me rename this guy so that I can import. Yep, developer package, but I will use developer as developer log developer log, like that. All right, so that would be the really simplest implementation of a logger, and clearly you cannot go to prod with this implementation. Like it's doing nothing, but it's a nice stub for our current project. And we will need to copy paste the same analyzer file. Oh my god, thank you. Indeed, we needed to copy analyzer file here. Thanks. So now it's there, and let's copy paste this boilerplate guy. Monitoring src di initializer, like that. Okay, and here I would need to run code generation again. Okay, probably something is wrong. Create, all right, implementation. Well, I do need barrel file, but clearly the problem is not in that. So let's create type monitoring.dart and generate this guy. And here is probably a misprint. The method sort alphabetically. Okay, I will do that. What do we have here? Latest versions, build runner. We do have a build runner. We have injectable. For monitoring, we have lazy singleton. It's under SRC, so that's fine. It should be registered. Oh, yep, sorry, wrong button. FPG in my dev environment will run Flutter pub-get, and FPB will run build runner. So, yep, the initializer generated this file for me. What methods might be handy except the log we've created? Implement a few. Well, clearly, if you're working in an application, you might on an application you might want not only log some events, you might want to put some warnings or error messages, which not necessarily would be fatals for your application. And your framework really dictates you which options are available for you. You might want to use Datadog as maybe not even alternative. You may use Datadog with Firebase in your application and have some more robust monitoring. Observability is quite an important topic nowadays, so you probably might want to check different options and use them in your application. But apart from log, you might want to have some warnings and error messages too. What other Firebase features might be useful for our application? Consider creating more packages similar to monitoring. Well, as a bare minimum, I would probably put analytics there, because right now we that will help, monitoring will help us to monitor the solution, but we might want to report some analytics events too. And I would add performance to see when the performance degrades in my application. So at least 2 more packages there. Design system. So the next package would be the design system, which would be a collection of reusable components for our application. And probably we will have our theme there too. Let's create a new folder for the design system, a new pubspec.yaml file there. Let me copy paste this guy. We agreed to use latest environment dependencies, so I will add them to analysis options. Now I remember that I need to copy paste this guy also, and we are good to go. So let's run code generation, pubget. Yep, it succeeded, so all is good there. Let's see. So the first thing that the tutorial proposed us to do is to create a theme data. Not a bad idea. Let's do this now. So I'll create a new file with theme, and we'll just copy paste this guy. I guess use material 3 flag is not required anymore, because if I'm not wrong, it's the default value now. So I will drop it, and it would be deep purple hard rock. All right, and we will put some additional common widgets here, like for example loading and error states for the application. To me that makes sense, so let's copy paste more code here. It should be under SRC, loading widget, and that's a really primitive version of the loading widget. But most likely you will have some guidelines in your project. Most likely you will have something more interesting than just a circular progress indicator centered in a screen. But that's a really primitive app, so it's good enough here. And it proposed to use to create an error widget too. So let me create one error widget here, and let me copy paste some code here too. It will just show some text here in the center of the screen. Probably not the best implementation, but it will do the job for us. And of course, barrel file. So tide design system.dart, and that would be our barrel file. Investigate what is possible to change with theme data, customize theme for your application. Well, there are tons of things we can change here. So feel free to investigate that yourself. Clearly, that's a really big topic. What other common widgets do you think we may have in the design system? Implement a few. Well, I will not work on the implementation today, but what I would put here, I would put custom labels. Not labels, sorry, custom buttons. Initially, like for simple projects, I think it's fine if you configure your buttons via theme, because, well, you can customize buttons quite well there. But in big applications, in big teams, that would not be enough. Like, I would suggest you to implement a custom scaffold with custom app bar, because that would simplify things for you. Custom list view, because most likely you will customize lists in your application if you target branded design. If you're fine with just a material application, then maybe that's fine. Maybe you can just use existing components and don't bother even with creating some custom cards, custom lists, page view, and all other widgets. And that's it for the utility layer. So after more than an hour, we are ready to start building the application. But you know what? I think that you might be already a bit tired of me talking. So let's probably schedule another live coding session. How about next week, for example, the same time, and we can focus on the application layer, application and feature layers. If Marvel API will still be down, then that's fine. We will work on other project. It would be really great. Like I found an API that shows weather on Mars, so I think that it would be interesting too. And we will implement this application in that case, if the API will still be down. If not, then Marvel API is slightly trickier, so I'd prefer to stick with it and show you some more tricks there. But for today, that's it. And you know what? I will give you an opportunity to ask your questions, like any last-minute question before we finish today's stream. Thank you, folks. Candy, nice to see you here. All righty. In that case, prepare your questions and we may start our next stream with your questions. Why haven't you added Melos here? Melos is absolutely must-have for architectures like that when you create many different packages. I don't think that I've added a tutorial part on how to add Melos, but in the real world application, yeah, Melos is absolutely must-have. All right, in that case, thanks everyone and see you in a week. Bye.